Is it working now? Okay, now it's working. Let's try it again. All right, here we go. Now we should be getting audio. Yay! It really is going to be week 12 before I get all the bugs ironed down. This version of the software has just completely eviscerated my production pipeline, and I'm kind of grumpy with it. Okay, back to the homework though. As you saw from the finished example, this is going to give us an opportunity to create something that's seemingly pretty complex. If you look at the raw files that come with this project, we're going to be replacing the content that's on the window, okay? The video file, or excuse me, the still frame that was captured here, the original still frame that was used in this animation is not what you see here. Now it's not getting any video? Well, there's a delay. There's a delay, so it should... You can hear my voice. You see the video. Try refreshing your page, Jess, and see what you get. Some people are getting it, other people are not. Yeah. I think we're good. So this will give us an opportunity in this homework assignment to really kind of flex our muscles with expressions. We're going to be going after a result where there's a lot of moving parts and pieces, including the replacement of the picture outside the window, the rise and fall of the sun, the intensity of the ambient light inside the interior and the exterior of our little window here. There's a lot going on, and of course the rotation of the hands of the clock. All things that we're going to control through a whole series of expressions in this week's homework assignment. I think you're going to find that creating these complex animations is relatively easy when we utilize expressions. This is all a still. Yeah, all the assets are still images for this assignment. Yeah, this just kind of illustrates the power of expressions, that we can have the change or the value change of one item immediately influence a number of other items within our scene. Okay, our lab assignment this week is going to give us an opportunity to get our hands dirty with some really fun expressions. We're going to be doing this cool little alarm clock. That's what it looks like. So your alarm clock handles, or the little, there we go, and then it goes off. Pretty great, pretty great. So we'll talk about how we construct this a little bit later on when we start digging into the expressions technology. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. This week is going to be a lot about time and expressions and how to work with some really neat technology underneath the hood. Questions before we get going. Let me make sure I get Vivian on the roll. Yeah, hit me.
On the lab assignment, that blue shape, is that something you're creating, or should that be?
Yep, nope, that's something you'll be creating. And we'll come back to the lab assignment. What you see here is an example of one possible scenario. If you look carefully at the requirements of this assignment, there's a lot of room for creativity and flexibility with the design elements. So don't just copy what you see, make your own. Okay. Let's jump over into After Effects and take a look-see at how we can start working with these expressions to get the result that we want. I think I want to start off by crafting just a very, very simple composition. Nothing too fancy. Maybe I'll do a little 1280 by 720. Let me unlock my aspect ratio. There we go. And we'll leave the background color as black. Okay. I encourage you to follow along and get your hands dirty with this. Part of the the challenge of working with some pretty intense tools is that they can often be rather intimidating. The more you press the buttons and the more you make compositions and understand the application of these ideas, the faster and easier you'll be able to grasp them in the end. So get your hands dirty, follow along. Everything that I'm going to be doing just now can be created on your own Mac or PC. Okay, let's check it out. I'm going to start off the day by just continuing to describe or refresh ourselves to the basic animation process that we've been exploring over the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to create a solid layer. And I want to make this layer, I don't know, maybe 100 pixels by 100 pixels, and it'll be blue. There we go. And I got a little blue cube, and that may be a little bit too small. So if I return to the layer settings, the solid settings, I can adjust that. Let's make it 200, not 20, excuse me, 200 by 200. 1280 by 720. Just a nice big canvas size, something that will allow us to create some shapes, play around with them, and then work with them.
What size is the blue square?
I think it's 200 by 200 now. Okay. All right, up until today, we've been working with the basic transform element inside of the layer, right? If I wanted to animate the rotation or the position of my little blue cube here, it would require me to go into the layer palette down here, expand it, open it up. There it is. There's the transform section, and buried inside of that section is the rotation channel. And this rotation channel, as the rest of the channels, are physically the element that's going to be keyframed. This we know. This is nothing new that we haven't already explored in a lot of different areas in the previous month and a half that we've been here. Okay, let's just do this. I'm going to move it over here and just simply animate the rotation of this cube. Oh, I don't know. What do you want to do? Let's just make it turn 2 times over the course, or we'll make it one revolution per second. There we go. Now we have 2 keyframes, and my little cube is just going to spin there, kind of like that. Nothing too fancy here. We've established the initial animation with some keyframes. Okay? At the heart of all animation engines requires keyframes. We can never avoid creating keyframes. They are the common denominator. They are the working unit in the animation world. So we can't ever forget about their role in the application of keyframes within our scene. However, not everything has to have a keyframe associated with it. What if I wanted to access and leverage the transformation of one layer and apply it to another? What's that process called? Parenting, absolutely, where we take the transform from one layer and have it influence the transform of another layer. Let's make another cube. I'll make another cube, new solid, layer, new, solid. And I'll leave it 200 by 200, but this time I'll just make it red. Here we go, okay? And let me get my little red solid here. I'll just put the red solid kind of right there, so it's out of the way. And now we can parent the red solid to the blue solid. Now, from our conversation that we had a couple weeks ago, there's 2 ways that we can parent layers to each other. We can either use the parent pull-down menu, which is found right here, or we can use a lovely pick whip. I'm a big pick whip guy. I think it's a great interactive way of making relationships between layers. You'll see me using the pick whip a lot. So I'm going to grab the pick whip of my red cube and just drag and drop it on top of my blue cube layer right below it. Since our blue solid already has keyframe information associated with it, that transformation is going to be applied to any of its children. In our case, the red solid. Let's play our animation now and see what we get. Interesting, right? What are we getting here? It'll cycle here in a second. Watch the animation again and look at what it's doing. Where is that red cube rotating around? Yeah, the middle of the blue square, right? And more specifically, it's rotating around the anchor point of the blue, right? So in every sense, the animation or the system that we've crafted here is taking into account the transformation of all of the channels on my blue solid, and it's applying that transformation and those numbers to the transformation of the red. All of these numbers, and even the ones that aren't keyframed, like anchor point, position, scale, opacity, those are being thrown in and being directly influencing the red solid. Yeah?
What happens if you move the anchor point of the blue square?
What happens if you move the anchor point of the blue square? Let's experiment. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. I'm all about experimentation. I'm going to put my playhead back on frame 1. I'll grab the blue solid. Here's the anchor point. Let's just, I don't know, somewhere in between them, like that. What would you imagine is going to happen now?
They rotate around each other.
Yeah, and specifically, they're going to both rotate around the anchor point of the blue. Okay, so we've changing the location of the parent, or the anchor point. Changing the location of the anchor point on the parent is having a direct influence on both the parent and the child in this particular situation. I want to hit undo and get my parent, or my anchor point, back to its original location in the center of the blue square. Let's just hit undo a couple times. And now we have kind of our little propeller animation that we had before. When we do parenting, everything from what the transform of one layer is influencing all of the transform channels on another. It's kind of almost like an overwrite to a certain degree, okay? Well, what if we don't want to have all of the transformation channels of our blue guy influence all of the transformation channels on our red one? What if we just want the rotation channels to be connected to each other? How would we do that? Any ideas?
Magic.
Magic. Yeah, and it's kind of magical to a certain degree. It really is. This is the problem with parenting. Parenting is a layer-to-layer system, not channels.
So what if you just affected the stuff on the blue solid, since the red one is attached to it?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, you'd be just affecting the red one, actually. And then what you did on the red would affect the blue.
Let's experiment with that. So if I'm reading it right, Dylan, if I wanted the red cube to rotate, I can bring open its rotation channel. Let's do the exact same thing here. I'll fire it off. There's a keyframe on frame 1. I'll go to frame 3, or a frame that I'll put my playhead at 3 seconds in, excuse me. I'll also rotate it 3 times. So in every sense, it's getting the exact same value of rotation as we did on the blue one. Let's see what happens when we play our animation now. What's happening? Yep, it is rotating around its own anchor point, but it's continually getting the transformation and the rotation from its parent.
Can you do that again?
Yeah, so I have keyframe data on both the red cube and the blue cube, but because of the, so there it is. That's all I've done here, Arthur. I've just rotated, I've keyframed rotation on my red guy. That's all I've done differently, okay? But since they're still parented, the rotation of the blue guy is still influencing the rotation of the red guy. And it's moving it, right? It's moving it like a propeller. Say again? What do you have done differently? Do you have the parent? Did you parent it? What you got? Hit the space bar. So the green one is parented to the blue one. Okay. Well, that's kind of funky and weird. Turn off the parent. Let's see what you got. Okay. So the blue one rotates, and are you rotating the layer or are you rotating the path on your rectangle? Show me. Let's be absolutely sure. Yeah, you're rotating the path, which is why it's not working out. Stephanie has run into a really interesting little challenge here. She's working with shape layers. I'm working with solid layers, right? The big difference between a shape layer and a solid layer is what? What's the big idea between a shape layer? It's vector, right? Yeah, shape layers are all vector-based, right? When something's vector-based, it's being created from a what? A path. Stephanie was rotating her path, not the layer. And it kind of illustrates the challenge that we're working within, right? Parenting is a layer-to-layer basis, okay? It's only looking at the transform information of the layer, not the path. If you were to rotate the transform of the layer, you'd probably be able to construct the exact same example that we have here. Problem. Big problem, right? Because often I don't want to have the entire transform of one layer influence the entire transform of another layer. Maybe I just want the rotation channels to talk to each other, or maybe I just want the scale channels to talk to each other. Ideally, what I'm after here is I want the blue cube to rotate in its current location, and the red cube to also rotate in its current location. Now, imagine, if you will, that we have 200 cubes on the screen, and we all need them to rotate at the exact same speed. Am I going to keyframe 200 of these things individually?
Yes.
No, absolutely not. That's just, that's just insanity, right? If we leverage the power of expressions, we can have the rotation of one layer correctly influence the rotation of the other channels that we want to have connected. Expressions allow us to make relationships between channels, not layers, but channels of a layer. let me show you how it works. It's really kind of neat and it's really kind of easy. I'm going to remove the rotation from my red solid. What's a fast way of just kind of removing all keyframe information from an existing channel?
Click on the stopwatch.
Click on the stopwatch, right? It's going to turn off the animation for that layer. Now my playhead is docked on frame 1, so when I click on the stopwatch, it's automatically going to adopt the rotation value of the frame it's currently residing on, the playhead's residing on, okay? A lot of people think that when you put your playhead, like if your playhead's over here, notice that its rotation value at 1 second and 18 frames is 1 revolution and 216 degrees. If I turn the stopwatch off right now, the computer's going to retain that value as its kind of default state. I don't want that. I want it to be back in its original location, so I'm just going to, in my case, just hit undo. Turn to frame 1 and then turn off the stopwatch. So be very aware at what place your playhead is currently residing in before you turn on and off keyframe information. It will adopt the current state of that layer. Okay, so here's my cool little challenge. Okay, I want to have this rotation channel for my blue guy influence the rotation of my red guy. Not the I don't want the entire layer to influence the red guy. Just the rotation, okay? I want to link 2 channels now, not 2 layers. I'm also going to remove the parent-child relationship from the scene. Here we go. And we're on our way. So in every sense, all that I have right now is a blue cube that's rotating around its own local anchor point 3 times in 3 seconds, and then a red cube who has no keyframe data applied to it whatsoever. So let's make the relationship. Let me zoom in so we can see what's going on. Oops, excuse me. Sorry. Okay. All right. So we need to make a relationship between the rotation on the red and the rotation on the blue. In order for me to activate an expression on a channel, I have to hold down the Option key or the Alt key if you're on a PC and click on the stopwatch. Okay? Hold on the Option key. I'm going to click on the stopwatch, and now our interface changes ever so slightly. Okay, let's explore the new things that have popped up. On the first line there where it says rotation, look at the values. They're all red, right? That means they're basically have been turned off. They're now in kind of receiver mode. They're receiving information from a layer. So we can't go in and continue to keyframe the red channel anymore. It's going to be influenced only by the parent that we establish. So we got to tell it which channel. So hold down your Option key and then click on the stopwatch. Okay.
On the PC, what is it?
It's the Alt key on the PC.
And you're doing it on the layer, or on the channel of the layer you want to influence, right?
You got it. You got it. All right, so on the second line here, you can see that the computer's automatically added some new interface for us. It says expression, rotation, and then we have some options. We'll come back to these here in a minute. But if we look over in our timeline, check it out. Look, we actually get a command. Expressions allow us to almost programmatically influence the animation of any channel inside of After Effects. That's the actual computer-driven command that causes this element to rotate within inside of our scene. So we are, in every sense, accessing the core computer programming language that drives After Effects. Now, I'm not asking you guys to be computer programmers. Trust me, don't worry about it. I'm not going to be asking you guys to, to debug the console and figure out how, all sorts of crazy loops and that kind of jazz. I'm not going to ask you to do that. But I am going to ask you to do some simple math. Okay? Let's make the relationship first, and then we'll come back in and talk about how we can append that command to get maybe a slightly different result. Okay, so this is you can click on it, you can write in things. I'm not going to write in anything at the moment. But let's talk about the link that we still need to make. So we've enabled an expression, but we really haven't connected that layer, or excuse me, that channel to anything else in our scene. So in effect, it's not really doing anything right now. So let's link it up. Let's connect the rotation of our red cube to take all the rotation information from our blue cube, and look here, check it out. It also has a pick whip. I love this, okay? I'm just going to grab the pick whip, left click and drag, and I want to place my cursor on the channel that I would like to receive data from. I'll let go, and seemingly nothing has changed, but if you go back over to your timeline, look at the command that the computer's automatically inserted into the command line interface. Okay? It no longer says transform.rotation. It says this comp dot layer, and then in parentheses, blue solid 1 dot transform rotation. Yes, ma'am.
So we're letting it overwrite what was already there, because it already kind of started off with the little basic transform.rotation.
You got it.
Overwrite that.
Well, I wouldn't say overwrite. I think we're appending the command. We're adding some more variables into the command to draw information from a different area.
I mean literally the text that was already there. Just delete that and let it create a new line of code.
Don't delete the text. Don't delete transform.rate. Did you delete transform.rotation?
Well, it's like, I can't tell if it's on there or not. You can't see the whole thing. And on mine, it looked like this. On mine, it looked like this when I dragged the little pick whip, right? And there's no space and no dot or no nothing between it.
Yeah. Let's
So
do this.
That's why I was thinking that goes away.
Let's do this. Hold down the Alt key and click on your stopwatch again. That will remove the expression. There we go.
Okay. I don't know what that. It's just an error.
An error. Okay,
All
let's
right,
add the
so-
expression again.
Right,
Boom.
'cause it can't
Transform
remember
that
that
rotation.
already. Oh,
Cool.
okay.
Now do the pick whip.
Okay, so just leave that selected.
As is, yep.
Before doing that.
Rock and roll. There it is.
Okay,
Yep, good job.
So it does overwrite that placeholder text.
Yes, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that reading expressions often is quite a challenge, but don't be intimidated by it. The guys down at Adobe have spent a lot of time trying to craft the interface with expressions to, at the very least, have it make sense. And what they're doing here, if you read the line of code that After Effects has already generated for us, what they're doing is they're starting with the most general description of the relationship that's possible. So they're saying a layer within inside this composition, okay? Just a layer, okay? That's the first general description of this relationship. And then they get a little bit more specific. They say, you know, this layer, or this comp, so this, look inside this composition. Well, what are we looking for inside of this composition? Well, we're looking for a layer. Well, which layer are we looking for? We're looking for a blue solid 1, so we're physically feeding in the name of the layer that we're pulling information from, right? Well, what information are we pulling from? We're getting transform information. Well, there's 5 transform channels. Which transform channel? The rotation channel. So we're starting with the most general description of the relationship to the most specific description of our relationship, okay? Let's see the output of this. Let's see what the computer has done. I think you're going to find it incredibly fascinating. Let me zoom out and hit the space bar, and let's take a gander. Aha! Wonderful. Wonderful. Now each cube is rotating around its own local anchor point and rotating at the exact same parameter. Now this relationship is live, so any change that we make to the parent, in our case blue solid 1, is immediately going to be adopted to the child, the red solid. So let's change some of the values, okay? I want to stop my animation, return my playhead to frame 1, and let's do this. Oh, shoot, let's just go. Actually, I misspoke. I'm going to put my playhead on the location of that second keyframe, and let's just, instead of making it, have it go 3 full revolutions in 3 seconds, let's just have it go 1 revolution in 3 seconds. And you can see the red solid has updated automatically. So we're sending, in every sense, we're sending all of this rotation information to the red solid. The expression has linked the channels, not the layers like we were inside the parent-child relationship in the parent pull-down menu. We're linking channels now, and just those channels. Kind of makes sense? Kind of makes sense? It's really, really neat. I love working with expressions, okay? I think it's one of those elements that really allows us to craft some compelling movements and to work more efficiently. Since we're doing kind of programmatic animation, let's kick it up a notch, okay? All computer programming code is based around math. What if I want to have the red cube move precisely 3 times faster than the blue cube? I love it. Let's go ahead and change the change a line of code in the expression. I want to stop the animation. I'll zoom in. So this comp dot layer blue solid 1 transform dot rotation. What if I wanted to go 3 times faster? How about I just do times 3? Interesting. So we're taking the rotation value, the degree of rotation, and we're multiplying that number by 3. Let's see what we get. Let's put my playhead over here. And now our red cube is moving 3 times faster than our blue cube. I haven't had to rekey anything. It's still pulling all that rotation information, but when it gets to the red cube, the expression is multiplying it 3 times.
So is that like one head of code right there, kind of like an algebra problem right there? Like
Yeah. Absolutely. We're starting to think like that. We're just infusing a little bit of hardcore math into our equation, and we're seeing the animation change in front of us.
That's really cool, actually.
Yeah, it's really neat. So let's do the opposite. If I wanted the red cube to go 3 times slower than my blue cube, what would I do? Divide by 3. Yeah, absolutely. So let's zoom in here. So instead of doing multiplies by 3, oops, not question mark, we'll do divide by 3. Let's see what we get. Yeah, and now the red cube is moving very, very slow because it's being fed the rotation value of the blue, and then it's dividing that value by 3, and we're getting the illusion of a slower speed.
So you're doing that with the actual the number of degrees as well?
Absolutely. 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 So what if I wanted, let's see.
Oh, I guess you just set the degree on the parent one, which is whatever's set on the parent.
Whatever's set on the parent is going to be divided by 3 on the red. Yeah. Let's make a different example, though. Let's make a different example. What if, and it's a little bit hard to illustrate this with my current example. I'm going to take my red guy, and I'm going to scale it disproportionately along the y-axis. So now it's a rectangle, okay? And shoot, we'll do the exact same thing on my blue one, just so it looks a little bit more consistent. Okay. What if I wanted to have the red guy always be at a right angle to the orientation of my blue? That would be mathematically a hard thing, or from our keyframing, it potentially could be a little bit of a nightmare. However, how could we do that with simple math?
Probably the programming.
Well, yeah, with our expression, but specifically, how would we append our little line of code here to get this red cube to be precisely 90 degrees? Yeah, so the expression is still alive. Okay, we're dividing the value that it's getting from the blue guy by 3. How could I get that red guy to be perpendicular to the blue one? Negative 90. Yeah, we do negative or positive. Yeah, either one will work. Let's do, so we'll minus 90 degrees, or we could add 90 degrees into the rotation value that it's getting from the red one or from the blue one. Go, boom. And now it's always, always, always going to be perpendicular to the blue one by a value of 90 degrees. And of course, we can put any number in there. If we wanted it to be offset by 45 degrees, we could easily do that as well.
Can you do that again?
Whoa.
Can you do that one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the expression that I have at the moment, negative 90. That's all I've added. I've eliminated the divide by 3, and I've just put negative 90 in there.
Tell me what I'm doing wrong. I did that.
Minus 90? Let's see. I don't know. Transform.rotation minus 90. Get rid of minus 90, and let's try it again.
Now what?
Okay, just click off of it. Did you hit return?
Ooh.
Maybe. Yeah, that may be our problem. Ah, now it's working. Although it should not be working. That's weird. Yeah, I wonder if we got an update issue going on here.
Sucks.
Yeah, but it is working, and the line of code that I've established was what you had earlier. So with this said, we can do some pretty neat things, because now what we're ultimately doing here is that we're having channels within inside of our composition directly influence other channels inside of our composition. Let's talk about how we can continue to work with this. Now with rotation, really what we're doing is that we're going from a value of 0 to 360 in total revolutions. What if we wanted to have the rotation of our guy also influence the opacity of another layer? Maybe a green circle or something. Let's see what happens. So I want to take my red solid here and just put it down a little bit lower so it's kind of out of the way. Its rotation is still working. Awesome. Fantastic. And this time I want to make a shape layer. Let's just do a polygon. I'll make it green so it's nice and obvious to see. Just draw it right there. Awesome. All right. I did a share this time because I wanted to talk about and illustrate how we can connect these channels. Stephanie was running into a problem earlier when we were using the traditional parent method of making relationships with expressions. We might be able to overpass that. Okay. And we're also going to be working with opacity, so it's no biggie. All right, let's do it real fast. Let's go into shape layer 1. Here's my polystar. Of course, the path that's responsible for drawing my polystar has a transform section. Here's the opacity of set. Awesome. What I have here is an expression on the opacity channel that's going to be influenced by the rotation of our blue cube. I'll hold down the Option key. Click on the stopwatch to add the transform, or excuse me, to add the expression. And I want to pick whip it down to that one right there. Let's see what we get. Ta-da! Pretty cool, huh? So I'm not animating the opacity of that layer. It's automatically doing it. Now, it initially starts off as invisible, right? Makes sense. At the first frame of our animation, the blue solid has a rotation value of 0 degrees, which is transforming the opacity value of my green pentagon there to an opacity value of 0%. What if I wanted to invert it? What if I wanted to initially have my green layer on visible? What can we do to our expression to flip the value? Think back. There it is. Let's return to 9th grade algebra. If we multiply the value that we're receiving from the blue solid by a value of -1, there we go. So how would I write the code, Cyrus? Good question, right? How would I write the code? We've got to multiply it by -1. Parentheses. There it is. Because if we did something like this, now we're going to be doing, if we did multiply, which is the little star, Shift 8 on your keyboard, -1. Oops. If we did something like that, we'd be multiplying and then subtracting 1. By encapsulating the -1 in parentheses, we're ensuring that the computer goes multiply -1. Like this. So we'll do that. And let me click off the expression. And it totally doesn't work. That should have worked. Why didn't that work? Let's get rid of the parentheses. May have misspoke. Nope, I was right. Yeah, why didn't that work? That should have worked.
Why would the shape layer end up telling you that he also is actually that layer?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
So with the red layer, when you use discretion to take the other layer, it says like, okay, I'm going to this layer and I'm taking the number 1 and I'm transforming the rotation. But when you select the shape layer, it doesn't say anything.
It does. this is the expression for the green shape layer. Yeah. So it is saying almost the exact same thing. This is what we're seeing on the red one.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's fine. And that's fine. It can have the exact same information. Okay, let me see why this is not working. Now it's working. Actually it was working, but this is actually kind of strange. It was working earlier. I just didn't give it enough time to go through its entire animation. So let's do it again. So we'll do multiply by -1. And if I go much further in the animation now, will it pop in? Because remember, that actually kind of makes sense. Remember, down here on the blue solid, we're going from a rotation value of 0 to 360. So in every sense, we're going from, I should have seen it though at one point. In every sense, when I tried to invert the value that was being fed into it by this expression, it's starting off as 360 percent opacity down to 0. So it still should have popped in. I'll have to continue exploring that. So that was kind of a big fail on my part. But hopefully the idea is not lost on you that we're trying to hook in different channels to each other. Okay? So this is just kind of academic. Let's kind of get it into the real world a little bit, because I'm all about real world application of really neat technology. We could use this if we're animating a whole series. Did you figure it out, Cyrus?
Yeah, I know why it doesn't work. It's because every time you feed the rotation value into it, it's getting multiplied by -1, therefore less than 0. Therefore, never opaque.
It's never opaque.
It's never going to show.
It's never going to show.
Because it's never going to be greater than 0.
It's never going to be. That is absolutely right. So how would we fix that? Ooh.
Well, what if you did more, what if you added another value to it? What would you look like that would
It'd still be negative.
Yeah, because whenever you can't have negative, you can't have negative opacity values. Yeah, and that's what's happening here. Good point. Good point. So we'll come back to that one a little bit later. I'll see if I can figure it out.
That example, doing the times -1, would probably be work on the rotation to make it rotate the opposite direction,
Absolutely would, but not in opacity.
but not for that.
All right. Let's bring this into the real world a little bit, because this is kind of academic. I mean, you could definitely use something like this when you're animating a lot of shapes and you want to have, one master channel, like on Blue Solid 1, control a number of different on-screen elements simultaneously. I've done that a number of times and it's worked very, very well. Okay. Let me show you some other cool things, because the idea of expressions can be extended into a lot of different worlds. Out there, I've done a lot of documentary work, and when you're doing documentary work, you have to create lower thirds for all the people that show up on screen, right? So if you see this in you're watching Dateline or the news, whenever they interview someone, there's always a lower third, a name bar that pops up below them to identify who this person is and produce some sort of credential that makes them a subject matter expert on whatever it is that you're talking about. Okay. Well, when you're doing a long-form documentary, you're going to have maybe 100 of these things inside of your composition, right? What if the client comes in and says, Pat, I love what you've done, but I want it all to be red text instead of yellow text. Now you have to go into 100 separate layers and change the colors, right? Whenever you're doing the exact same thing over and over and over and over again, the opportunity of human error pops in pretty quickly. As much as I would like to think I'm a robot, I'm not actually a robot. So I'm going to mess up. If I create an intelligent system that allows you to make connections between layers, maybe I can have an expression established that when I change the color of one layer, it automatically changes the color of all the layers that are connected to it. Let's check it out. Let's check it out. We've been working with transform information, but any channel inside of After Effects can be hooked into one another. Let's play around with just the 3 shapes that we have here. Just for giggles, I'm going to get rid of the current expressions that I have in my scene. So I'm going to nuke the opacity expression, I'll nuke the rotation expression, and I'll get rid of the rotation of my blue cube too, just to kind of get us back to something that's a little bit more. I turned off the expressions that were currently existing inside of my scene just to kind of simplify what we have on screen here at the moment. Okay. Now, this is something that is only going to work when there's an exposed channel for color. If you look at solids, do we have a channel inside of our layer that defines the color of that solid? Oops, excuse me, I apologize. Silly Doc. Go away, Doc. Do we have a channel down here that defines the color of that layer? No. So this isn't going to work with shape layer or solid layers, excuse me. I kind of don't use solids anymore, okay? Because they're kind of unintelligent items within inside of After Effects. Shape layers, those are the bee's knees because we can control every aspect of a shape layer on a per channel basis. Let me get rid of my blue solid and my red solid. They're no longer serving a purpose for me. They're kind of dumb layers, unintelligent layers, let's put it that way. I'll rename this one green. And let's do this. I want to have a red star because I'm a shining star today. Woo! Okay, awesome. Cool. Wonderful. And then I'll also, I don't know, just make a blue sphere. Cool. Okay, that'll do. That'll do. Now, shape layers are amazing because, as we know, they're vector-based, but all of the channels that make their shapes on screen are exposed to this. If I go into Ellipse 1, check it out. I have a fill section here that has a defined color channel. I can link these together, which is pretty neat. Maybe I want to have my blue sphere be the master controller object for all the colors of all the different elements within my scene. Let's do it through an expression. All right. I'm going to show you kind of a little bit of a trick. It's a buyer beware trick. When working with shape layers, I'm often going in and out of this crazy hierarchy, and there's a lot of different levels within this hierarchy, right? We got contents, then we go down one hierarchy into Ellipse 1, then we go down into another hierarchy into Fill 1, and then we got some color values. That's where we actually physically find channels, right? Navigating this hierarchy can be a pain in the rear end at times, right? Especially when you have multiple shape layers that you need to adjust at the exact same time. Let me show you a cool little trick, but this is going to add a keyframe to each one of the channels that we're trying to manipulate, but it definitely allows us to filter our layers stack a little bit more intelligently. Check it out. I'm just going to apply a keyframe for my color channel. I'm not going to actually add a second one, but I'm just trying to generate a keyframe. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for all of these guys. I'm going to go find the fill color value and just add a keyframe. There it is. Fill 1 for my green guy. There it is. Okay. Here's a great power user keyboard shortcut. It's the U key. U as in uniform. The U key is going to bring to the surface the channels that currently have keyframe data applied to it. Because I added a keyframe, a single keyframe on frame 1 of my animation to all 3 of my layers, or all 3 of the color channels associated with their layer, I can very quickly bypass that crazy hierarchy that I was working with before and expose just the channels that I need to work with, okay, that I'm really ultimately interested in. You can do this on multiple layers simultaneously. So check it out. Hit the U key. There, oops, excuse me. Come on, After Effects. Behave. Okay. U key. U. There it is. Wonderful. And I don't remember if this was something that was in CS6. It may have been, but I've only been really made aware of it here in CC. If you look carefully, they're also starting to communicate the color of that channel in the timeline, which is in CS6, yeah, which is really neat. You can also see it in gradients. So if you animate the change in color over time, you'll see that transition right here in the timeline, which I find very cool. Very cool.
Show just U?
The U key, U's in uniform. Now you gotta, yeah, and it's gonna expose just the channels on that layer.
And if you don't select any layers and you push U, it shows them for every layer.
Now, do you have keyframe data applied on shape layer 3?
Okay. And U.
Yeah, but do you have keyframe data applied on shape layer 3? Did you keyframe the color channel on shape?
Not yet.
Yeah, so the U key is only going to expose the channel that has keyframe data on it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Remember U. I find myself using that keyboard shortcut, I think personally more than most, because 9 times out of 10, especially when I'm editing an animation, I just want to get to just the channels that I have keyframes on. All right, now that we can see the ones that we have keyframe data on, let's make a relationship between some of these guys. All right? I think if I remember correctly, the blue sphere in our earlier prototype was going to be the master controller. So I'm going to hold down the Option key, click on the red color channel. Here's the expression. Let's link it up. The same thing for this guy. Boom. Let's link it up. You can already see the update happening. Huzzah. Now they're all blue because they're pulling that channel information from the sphere.
You do that one more time, please?
Yeah, so I just added an expression. I'll hit undo a couple times. So we're just doing it through an expression, right? So here's the red star. Here's the color channel that's responsible for generating the fill color on my red star. Hold on the Option key, click on the stopwatch. We get our expression controls. Grab the pick whip, and then I just place my pick whip on top of the color channel for my blue sphere. And then I rinsed and repeated for all of them. Questions? What went wrong? Did you figure it out?
No.
What happened?
So I click Control,
Option.
Option.
Option. And click on the stopwatch. Get out of there. Yeah, stopwatch, stopwatch. Yep, now there's the expression.
Okay. I link it to the.
Yep, there you go. Cool. Now click on something else and you'll see it update. It takes a click. Yeah, and now it's
Okay.
yellow.
Cool.
Yeah, pretty neat, huh?
Top with the blue sphere, if that changes color, will it change the color of everything else?
Let's find out. Let's find out. That's a great question. Let me add that expression real fast to my green guy. Hold down the Option key, click on the stopwatch. I'll grab the pick whip, and assign it to take the color of my blue sphere. And this is kind of a weird update thing. It's not going to update your thumbnail until you click on something else. Yeah, it's just kind of funky. All right. So the question from Arthur was, what if I animate the color of my blue sphere? Is it going to update all of the other channels that are associated with it? Let's find out. All right, and I'll just do it over the course of a second here. I'll change the color of my blue to red, and I think you can see the answer. The answer is absolutely yes. Yeah, and that's the problem with animating colors inside of After Effects. It's not like a dissolve, or it's dissolving from red to blue. It actually cycles through all the hues.
I keep on getting an error message when I try to change the last one.
Let's see what error. After Effects warning: an expression was disabled as a result of an error. Okay, that's weird.
Do it again.
Turn the expression off this time. Okay, so you're not when you're just clicking on the stopwatch, you're not turning the expression off.
Okay.
If you want to disable the expression, hold on. Yeah, there we go. And now it's off.
Okay,
Now try it again. See what happens. Then okay. That was not necessarily a bad thing. Oh, maybe it is. Hit OK. I want you to do the exact same thing this time. Put your cursor on color. Don't go on the layer. Go on the channel itself. I think Dee was running into an issue that may be something that you're all seeing. She was trying to put, when she was assigning the parent, she was putting her pick whip cursor on the layer, not the channel, and she was getting an error. Remember, these are channel-to-channel relationships, not channel to a layer. Did that resolve your issue, Dee? Yeah, great. Great, great, great. Awesome. Cool. Yes, sir.
This is the main one, but this one, the second one changes because of that. The third one, can we just link to the second one?
Let's find out.
No.
I would imagine not, because if you look at specifically what the computer is doing here, And let's see, color is probably a bad illustration of this. It worked on the rotation. Do you remember when we were linking rotation channels together? The rotation of the child turned red, right? That was kind of the After Effects interface saying, I'm being overwritten by another value. Since it's being fed another value, taking a third layer and trying to connect it to number 2 probably isn't going to work. Yeah. Yeah, and you're not going to gain anything in that equation either.
How do we identify which one is the main?
You got to do that manually. You got to do it manually, and well, I guess you got to kind of have to remember, and it's going to tell you in the command code itself, right? It always tells you what the controller is. Okay, if you look specifically here, they all say the exact same thing. This comp.layer, blue sphere is the name of the layer, and then it's actually given us the path name here too that's responsible for driving the color. So it's going to tell you, but you'll have to manage this. Remember, or look in the expression editor. Okay. That works too. That works too. All right. Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. Okay, now this works with anything that has a channel associated with it too. So if you were to do like a text layer, for example, let's make the color white.
Let's try with the rotation.
Let's try it with the rotations.
Yeah, hopefully that works.
Fun. Let's just make this a little bit bigger. And we'll make it bold. So it's real easy to see. There we go. All right, so here's my my text. Okay. Now text is a little bit more difficult because we don't have a color channel associated with it, right? A little bit more of a challenge when working with text. So we'll have to think a little bit more creatively when trying to do this on a text-based layer. Okay. Shape layers are the way to do it. Okay. For the most part. Oh, actually, I just had a thought. I was about to show you the old school way of doing it, but they may have added it in this animate section. They have. Okay, good. I was about, every once in a while, I remember that animate tab. That animate pull-down menu is something that we haven't had for a long, long time. It's a relatively new feature to the animation system, and I often forget that it's there. Like many old school After Effects guys, we were forced to learn the manual way of doing all these effects back in the 90s. Now we have that lovely animate tab that makes life easier. So on my text layer here, I want to add a new channel for me to animate. And I'm going to do fill color. And let's just do RGB. Yeah, there it is. Now we have a channel, and we can create an expression from our blue sphere. Exact same thing that we were doing earlier. So I'll hold down the Option key, click on Fill Color for my text, use the pick whip and assign it to the color channel of my blue sphere, and there it is. Once I click and update the interface, kaboom. Pretty great. Yes, sir?
Okay, so I was a little stubborn and had to figure out how to do the opacity thing.
Oh, good. What'd you come up with?
So opacity, if you wanted to go the other way, you have to go from 100 and then you subtract the rotation up.
I like it. I like it. So you were, let's just pretend that this line of text here was the rotation that we were, or the expression that we were working with earlier. What did you add to the end of that line of text?
You don't add to the end of it, you go to the beginning.
Where it says transform.rotation?
No, you go to
The very, very beginning.
the very beginning.
Okay.
And then you go 100 minus.
And then the value that makes sense. I like it. Cool. Great solution. Great solution. Awesome. Yes, absolutely. Let me back up for a second here. Okay. Here's the inherent challenge with text layers. Okay. If you look at all of the channels that come with a text layer, there's nothing in here that says color. Nothing. So we have to add it. We add it by going to that section where it says animate in the upper right-hand corner, this little white circle with the dot next to it. If we click on it, it's going to allow us to add a number of channels that we can animate on this text layer, one of which is fill color. And let's just do RGB. That's what I did. And then, boom, there it is. We have a channel.
I just noticed it doesn't take away the color from the original thing. Like in the timeline?
Mine's changed color. Mine was originally white, now it's red.
No, like, I don't know what that panel is called. The one below the composition panel.
Down here?
No, to the right. That one. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. I see what in the actual character palette itself. This one over here is still white. Is that what you're talking about?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Well, either way, let's keep moving on. Okay. So I want to add an expression to this fill color channel. Option key. Click on the stopwatch. I'll grab the Pickwick, assign it to be fed its information from the blue sphere's color channel, and then once I click, it'll update. And there it is. Everything's the same color. Really, really great system inside of After Effects. This is kind of like the underpinnings of a cascading style sheet that you're used to seeing on a website or in some of your InDesign documents. Okay, a great way for us to expose a lot of different layers, a lot of different channels to be influenced by master controllers. Okay. Let's take this one step further, shall we? I'm going to remove, well, you know what? I'm just going to delete all the elements that I have here, and we'll start over with a clean slate, and then I'll show you one new thing, okay? All right. I'm just going to very quickly draw some shapes. Doesn't matter what. They'll all be the same color, and I'm happy with that, okay? And we're just going to pretend. This is an art class, so we're totally allowed to pretend. Earlier, in the previous example, we were going through and we were connecting the color channels for each one of our shapes to a master shape. And let's just do it for shape layer 3 since it's the top one on there, right? Let's return to the fill channel here that's responsible for drawing the color. I'll add a keyframe, kind of do the exact same thing that I did before, just so it's really easy for us to get in and out of the hierarchy. Color. There we go. All right. I'll hit U just to expose the color channels, or the layers that have been keyframed, and there we go. In the previous example, we were going through and we were making expressions, and we were linking everything to a layer, right, or a channel on a layer. That can get kind of messy sometimes. I think Zach was bringing to the surface a problem that a lot of us run into. How do we know which layer is really responsible and in charge for defining the color of all these other elements within our scene? That can be a challenge, especially if you're not comfortable working inside of After Effects, or if you're not comfortable working inside of expressions or with expressions. But let's remember the concept here. We are taking a channel that's currently residing on a layer and having that channel influence a number of other channels. What if we had a layer that didn't get rendered? What if we had a layer whose pure definition is to be a container for a number of different effects and to influence things on kind of a deeper animation level? We have access to said layer and in After Effects. It's called a null object. A null object inside of After Effects is a non-renderable item. It's a layer. Let's go ahead and add one. So we'll go Layer, New, Null Object. We added our null object. This is what it's going to look like inside of our interface. Okay? In the composition viewer, it's just going to show up as a silly little cube. If we examine the contents of our null object down in our layers or in our timeline, you'll see that it has a transform, and that's it. Seemingly very simple. However, a null object can do a number of different things, including it can be affected on couple different layers, a couple different levels, excuse me. FYI, you can also parent things to null objects. I know a lot of people use null objects as the element that's fundamentally animated. I worked with an individual who spent some time in Industrial Light and Magic, and he told me straight up, he's like, when I did Star Wars, I animated all of, he did the Queen ship on Star Wars Episode 1 and 2. You guys know what I'm talking about? The Queen ship, the big silver ship, the chrome ship that Queen Amidala flew around on. And he said, yeah, when I was animating that, I actually parented all the transforms of my objects to nulls. And I animated the nulls. And the reason I did that is that the model was constantly going through revisions. And whenever there was a new revision to that piece of artwork, I'd swap out the model file and I wouldn't have to reanimate anything because all the animation was existing on the null that the object was parented to. Kind of a nifty way of working. However, we can add effects to nulls, and this is where it really becomes cool. Inside of our effects library, we have a whole category of effects called expressions controls, and they're really kind of neat. This is an opportunity for us to really kind of go in and make a neat little interface for our expressions. We don't have to rely upon channels that are already existing on layers. We can make a master controller that's outside of the layer and animation and design elements of our composition using this series of controls. And look at the different options that we have here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you look carefully, we have a color control. Woo, awesome. So I'm going to apply the color control effect to my null. It's going to show up here in my effects control palette. It will also, and more importantly for our conversation about expressions, show up in the effects section down in our timeline. There it is. There's color control, and there's the color swatch. So I can rename this layer master control. Okay. Ready for you mega nerds out there? MCU. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? MCU? Anyone? Tron, from Tron. I'm the only Tron nerd. And the MCU was the big baddie in Tron. He was the evil program that was trying to destroy the world. Anyways, okay. Huh? Is it MCP? Did I get it wrong? Maybe I thought it was Master Control Unit, but maybe it's Master Control Program. Either way. Okay. So this guy is now going to be the controller for all the color information of our scene. We've globalized this entire process. We'll still do the exact same expression that we did earlier, but this time I'm going to link it to my master controller guy. There we go. Now we've separated the color controls from the design elements in our scene, and we don't have to worry about this master controller being rendered. Shoot, we don't even need to have it visible within inside of our timeline for its effects to influence the rest of our scene. We can change the color, and everything updates immediately. Let me tell you that this is transformative when you're used to working in cascading style sheets or you're thinking globally. Because now we can have one layer that we can place 8 or 9 different color effects to. We can put as many different effects, expression effects, on this layer as we want. And we can name them if we wanted to as well. For example, let's just go in. Here's color controller. Okay. If you hit return, I can say maybe this is the bar color control. Okay. On that layer, I can again add another expression control for color. And maybe the second one, this is maybe text. I'm typing in the effects control palette, I'm sorry. Up here. Maybe this is just text control, okay? Because now we have a global operator that can be the home of many, many control systems that will influence my entire animation. This has saved my bacon a couple times, okay? Because I've literally had experiences out there in the real world where the client has come in and says, Pat, I love what you've done. But we've rebranded our entire organization. Our primary color is no longer blue. Now it's orange, and you need to update all your work now. to reflect this, okay? Since I work globally with this expressions at the core of almost everything that I do, making that change is a one-click process opposed to going into, you know, every single layer and changing the colors, okay? That's insanity. Yes, ma'am. Question? Of course, absolutely. What can I help you with? It's not changing. Okay. Okay, now that it's linked. All right, let's see. All right, go up to the top there, and let's just change it from pink to blue. There we go, and they're still yellow. Okay, let's go into which layer is responsible for shape layer 3. That one. Let's just kind of decode. So that's the little star on the right. Turn its, collapse its channels.
Okay.
Oop.
Enter.
Oop. The little arrow. I'm sorry. Collapse it. Click on the little arrow next to the blue square. Nope. That one. Now expand it because I want to see all the channels that are associated with this layer. And I'm curious why it's not going blue. What is driving it to go yellow? Okay, let's do this. So we got contents. Aha! I see what's going on. Okay. Scroll up ever so slightly on your shape layer. Okay. It goes contents. See how it says fill? Yeah. Did you add that fill?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That fill channel is affecting the contents of the entire layer. If you go into Polystar 1, it has its own fill channel, which is yellow. That's the channel that we should have linked to our master controller.
Okay.
Yeah. You're welcome. Any other questions on what we've explored? What we've explored so far? Okay. Just real quick, and this is just a demonstration. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if you explore the expression control effects that we can add into our scene, there are a bunch of them in here that are really kind of neat, including angle control, which will allow us to control rotation values. Checkboxes are really good for enabling and disabling something on the fly. So if you wanted to, let's say, animate something just kind of strobing, you could go into the opacity channel and animate it going from 0 to 1, 0 to 100, 0 to 100, 0 to 100. Or maybe you can establish an expression and have this checkbox do the animation for us. Simplifies it a little bit. Color control, layer control. This is going to be transform information, so we can affect X, Y, Z position information outside of our scene. See, I may have misspoke. That may be point control. Layer control. Let me refresh my memory. So this is a way for us to go in and I've never actually used this one before, but it looks like we just get a pull-down menu, and yeah, that's kind of interesting. I don't know exactly how I would use that one, but it's there. And then point control, I've used this one a couple times. This one gives you screen coordinates that we can use to affect like a position channel or the location of an effect, things like that. And then slider control, this is just a slider, and it's a never-ending integer. Okay, we'll just go you can go as far down as you want or as far as up as you want. It's really kind of neat. I had an opportunity to listen to a presentation a couple years ago by a guy named Stu Maskowitz, and Stu used to be the co-founder and visual effects supervisor at a really big visual effects firm in San Francisco called The Orphanage, and they were really prevalent in the San Francisco visual effects community for a number of years. They did all the VFX work for Sin City. They did Hellboy. I mean, they were a big studio in San Francisco. Unfortunately, they were not able to survive the recession, and they went belly up. But Stu was kind enough before they went out of business to produce or provide a nice presentation on some of his effects work. And I think it was for, what was it? I've totally forgotten the name of the film that he was working on. But he had to have a whole bunch of flies in the scene, right? He'd have, thousands of little flies in the scene, all animating from a specific direction. And, of course, you wanted the wings of the fly to move, right? Well, he was able to go through and create an entire effects-driven interface for the animation of his little fly using expressions. And from that one system, he was able to affect all the animation values of all the flies simultaneously, and it was very, very cool. Expressions are a powerful, powerful addition to our animation pipeline inside of After Effects. They allow us to make relationships between channels and then change their behavior by appending the actual command that influences the transition of the values on that channel. Really super cool. I love it. If anything, use it for global colors. I mean, that's the most applicable thing for this technology. It's great. Questions? Let's take a break. Okay, let's take a break. Okay, so before the break, we were spending our time talking about expressions. I want to transition and start talking about time effects instead of After Effects. And this is kind of really cool. As you can see on the screen here, I've just brought in a video clip of a really cool motocross event. And if we play the clip just forward in real time, or as close to real time, you can see that it is just the dude going off the ramp, doing an epic stunt, and then landing safely back down here to good old planet Earth. Something that you will never see me doing ever in my life. I love watching extreme sports, but I will never participate in extreme sports yet because dirt and concrete, they're hard, man. You fall on that, that's gonna hurt, man. I want to watch extreme sports from the comfort of my own couch. Thank you very much. However, maybe what we want to do is to play this clip in reverse, right? And maybe we want to start playing around with the speed in which this dude is taking off from the ramp. Perhaps we want him to do like, you know, a Michael Bay epic slow motion flip. He goes up the ramps and then brrr, he's slow motion, and then zoom, he comes back down and finishes the shot. Okay. Well, we can do that with the time effects instead of After Effects. It's really quite easy to do, but it requires us to go into a really weird conceptual work environment. And you'll see this in your homework this week, and I wanted to talk about it and introduce it so at the very least you have a little bit of understanding and fluency of this really strange environment. Now you can do this with any video clip. However, this is going to be a little bit more of a challenge when you're working with assets that are generated inside of After Effects. So if you're working with shape layers or text, you can still do this, but it's not going to be, well, you're not going to see the effects of these time-based effects pretty easily. With video files, you'll instantly see it. Let me transition my playhead back to the first frame. And let me show you how to apply the time effects. You can find them from a couple different locations. Primarily, you got to make sure that the layer is selected. And then from the top of the screen where it says layer, check it out. We have an entire category of time effects. And there's 4 of them there. There's one called enable time remapping, time reverse, time stretch, and freeze frame. Now let's do the easy ones first. I'm all about understanding the low-hanging fruit. Easy victories is how I kind of approach most problems. Time stretch and time reverse. Let's do time reverse. Just by the name of the effect, what do you think is going to happen when we apply time reverse? It's going to go backwards. You got it. Yeah, let's just do time reverse. And now if we play our clip, and then he goes backwards. Okay, so we've flipped, we've reversed the clip with the time reverse effect. You can see down here in our timeline, the playhead is moving forward in time, but the visual that we get is in reverse. Okay, so that one's pretty easy to code and kind of understand. I want to stop my playback, hit undo to get rid of my time reverse, and back into that same pull-down menu, I want to do time stretch. Now this is the one that allows us to go in and speed up or slow down our effect, okay, or the speed of this clip globally. Now this is a global command, so we're going to affect everything at the exact same rate. So it's either going to be everything is going to be slower or everything's going to be faster. Let me open up the menu here, or the panel, and show you what the channels look like. So we'll do time stretch. You'll get this, okay. You have a couple different methods to adjust the speed of your clip. So the stretch factor, if I wanted this to go twice as fast, what should I put this in? 200. 200, okay. So if I wanted to go really, really quick, let's do 200, okay. And it'll even give you a new duration down here at the bottom. Did I go the opposite direction? I did go the opposite direction. Stretch factor, if you went 200, now it's twice as long. 50, yeah, I apologize. 50 and then the new duration. I've actually kind of relied on this more than the percentage, because I get to define the exact duration that I want this clip to be. If I wanted it to be 10 seconds, I can put the new duration down there as 10 seconds, and then it will do the heavy lifting and figure out the time stretch percentage for me. Okay? Let's just go ahead and confirm this. Notice what happens to the duration of the clip in your timeline. It physically shrinks it. Now that clip is half as long. Now this is kind of a permanent thing to a certain degree. So you got to be careful with it, okay? If we were to play back the clip now, really fast, boom, and then it gets done, all right? Inversely, yeah, see, look, this is why working with time effects or working with the time stretch can be a little bit of an issue, because it's not going to tell us that we've stretched or we've adjusted the overall length of our clip here, okay? There's nothing inside of the interface after we do that time stretch that reminds us that we've done it without hitting undo. There we go. Let's just do it again. Layer, time stretch, and I'll do 200 now. And as you can see, it's much slower. Slow-mo. So that's kind of cool.
So can you speed up like a specific part of it?
Yes, absolutely. And that brings us to the enable time remapping. Okay. Before we get there, the last one in here, you'll probably can figure out as well. Layer, time, freeze frame. Okay. That's basically just going to make a freeze frame at whatever moment you have down here. Okay. So it's just a still image. By adjusting this number, you can grab a different frame of the video clip to serve as a freeze frame. Okay. And it will always be that frame throughout the duration of that clip in our timeline. Okay. Let me hit undo, get rid of that, and now let's play around with the big daddy of them all, which is enable time remapping. So we'll go layer, time, enable time remapping. This one's kind of conceptual, and it forces us to manipulate these values in a really weird work area called the graph editor. If you're used to working in animation packages, the graph editor is something that you will see quite consistently. The After Effects graph editor is okay. It's okay, but it enables us to manipulate our keyframe data on a much different level. Now, initially, when you enable time remapping, you can see that visually nothing's really changed. However, now we actually have an effect that's been applied to our layer. I like this because we're working in a non-destructive workflow now, and I can see precisely how the parameters of this effect are having an impact on our final scene. Okay. If you look carefully, the channel here produces a number of time values, and we have associated keyframes. Now, it's automatically going to make those keyframes for us. Okay. We have one at the beginning, and if you look carefully, we also have one here on the end. I find it very, very difficult for me personally to work with inside this keyframing environment when manipulating the time remapping effect. If you click on the channel, and this is the part that everyone misses, they forget to click on the channel itself, okay, on the effect. We can enter into the graph editor, which will allow us to mess around with time in a little bit more natural environment, okay? This is the button that opens up the graph editor, okay? Boom. And welcome to the graph editor inside of After Effects. It's kind of a little bit of a beast, so let's just take a look at it. Now, I encourage you to revisit 10th grade geometry, where you were plotting points along a two-dimensional grid. We're doing the exact same thing here, but our graph, is not plotting points along the x and the y axis. We're plotting points along two unique axes here. Going left to right horizontally is our timeline, okay? If you look carefully, these lines here, these vertical lines here, perfectly match up with the ruler that's at the top of our timeline. So that in essence, they represent the moments in time in our composition. Like I said, this is really kind of a conceptual work environment. Now, the vertical axis is actually speed, okay? Time itself. Down here is 0, up there is 2 seconds. So this is the overall speed of our clip. Notice that it's increasing in speed at a kind of a linear value. It looks like a diagonal line, right? This is the beginning of the clip. The little cubes represent the keyframes. It's the end of the clip. If I wanted to reverse the clip, I can reverse the angle of that line, right? And then it's going to play that clip backwards. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to grab that keyframe, move it up vertically, Boom. I'll grab its little counterpart there, move it back down to 0. It should snap like that. And if I zoom out, check it out. Now my clip is yet again playing in reverse. Awesome. In essence, this is what the time reverse effect is doing, is it's changing this function curve and flipping its line. It's flipping its function curve. That's what this line is called. But let's be a little bit more conceptual with it. I want to restore it back to its original settings, and we can have some fun with it. Okay. What if I wanted to have it go really slow, starting right about there? So really slow in here, and then it speeds up there at the end. Check it out. Maybe right in there. I can start adding keyframes into my time remap channel here and start crafting the speed in which it's going to transition through this entire effect. So I want to add a new keyframe by clicking on the little diamond. I'll add a keyframe. Boom. That will show up down here in my graph. Now keyframes come in pairs. At the moment, this really doesn't do anything. So I got to define when I want it to return to its maximum speed, and maybe somewhere right around in here as he's falling, perhaps maybe I have him speed up. So right there, I'll add another keyframe. Now that I have two keyframes, I can start adjusting this line. When we flatten out the line, we're going to slow down time. If the line is perfectly horizontal, freeze frame. If it's slightly at an upward angle, at a pitch, it's going to be very slow. So if I was to change the location of the second keyframe, bring it down a little bit, you can see that the pitch here is now changing. And now, let's play it. And it's slow in the middle, and then speeds back up. Okay, let's really make it dramatic and go all Michael Bay on it. There we go. Now it's super, super slow, and then it's going to speed back up. Now this isn't magic. Okay, there's only a couple video frames within that section that define the movement of our motorbike within that area. So it's not going to be really fluid movement, okay? Because it's not adding new video frames into the final result. It's just slowing down the existing frames in there. So what would happen if I made this line absolutely flat? Freeze frame, absolutely. So this is a really great way of going in and having it go from live action to freeze frame back to live action. So I could do something like that. And now check it out. It goes from live action, the moment it hits that keyframe, boom, freeze frame while the function curve is flat here. And then once it gets over here, it's going to play the rest of the clip. It doesn't skip the frames. Yeah, we're not deleting. It holds that one frame for as long as it is here, and then it's going to play the rest of the clip at this speed at the end. So if we wanted to, we can just go in and only have it maybe do a freeze frame for a second. And then it's going to go in and do its thing. And we can add as many frames in here as we wanted too. So maybe we want to have a freeze frame right in there. Let's add a couple more keyframes. Flatten out the line, boom, something like that. And then it keeps going. And then it can get really strange when you start doing things like this. Because now, on these downward areas, what have we done? The slope of that angle is different. It's gonna go backwards. It's gonna go backwards. Then it goes forward again from there. So whenever the slope is going this way, from the left to the right, we're in reverse. When the slope is going from, when it's going from high to low, reverse. When it's going from low to high, forwards. Okay. The time remapping tool gives us a lot of control as to how the speed effects, or how the time effects are adjusting the speed of our clip. Okay, the playback speed of our clip. We just get more control. However, and I'll be the first one to admit, it is very conceptual and kind of funky and weird working inside the graph editor. This is just our first kind of exposure to the graph editor. We're going to be exploring the nuance of the graph editor over the upcoming weeks. I'm a big believer that everyone needs to be a master at the graph editor. It's one of those skills as motion graphics artists that you just have to have. It's kind of, it's the fingerprint of someone who knows what they're doing. You know, if you want to give a polished, professional, presentation of your animations, you have to adjust a number of things inside the graph editor to get that professionalism. So this is just our kind of first foray. Now, the graph editor is a unique edit environment when compared to our timeline. So if I wanted to get back to my timeline and that traditional interface that we've been used to, that we've been working in all semester long, just click on the graph editor button one more time, boom, and now we're back to keyframes. And we're back to the clip bars and all that jazz, the stuff that we've been used to seeing. Okay? Questions? You'll see this in your homework this week, and I wanted to introduce the concepts before we went any further. Okay? All right, questions on what we've talked about tonight. Okay, let's get real familiar with the expectations for both our homework and our lab, and then we'll open up our lab and just kind of jump into our assignments this week. If we go back to renderography.com, oh, here we go. All right. Let's go check out our homework. This is the Sunrise assignment that comes directly out of our book. It's worth 50 points. It's due by the beginning of the next class. I'll upload the assets to Renderography for those of you that need them. I have them on my machine. I'll just do it real fast during the lab so everyone can get access to it. Almost the entirety of this animation is going to be driven by expressions. So tonight's conversation about linking channels is really, really important, and you'll see this in play for almost everything that you do. Okay? It's not a particularly long assignment. It's only a 10-second animation. So once you set up the framework, it should be one that you can knock out pretty quickly. As always, please make sure you're handing in both the After Effects project file and the rendered QuickTime movie to the Dropbox. You guys have done a really, really great job this semester of handing in both those files. Just keep doing it. It's really helpful for me. Great job. For our lab assignment this week, some specifics. I showed you the example earlier where you're making this cool little alarm clock. There it goes. And then at one point, it doesn't matter when, the alarm clock needs to ring and go off. I'll let you figure out what that looks like and how the animation is going to take place. There are some technical requirements that I would ask you to look to include. Both arms of the clock need to spin at different speeds. That's something I'm looking for in particular. Going back to our conversation about expressions, you can figure this out by adjusting the command in the expression editor. Frame size in this animation, 720 by 480, and this is something that a lot of people miss, unfortunately, when they're handing in this assignment. The assets that I've given you are not 720 by 480, okay? The render composition that you turn in needs to be 720 by 480, so pay very, very, very close attention to frame size as you're working through this project, okay? In addition, the duration is going to be 10 seconds and a pixel aspect ratio of 0.91. When you're finished, please render out an MOV or a .mp4 using the H.264 codec. And like your homework, I need both the After Effects project file and the rendered QuickTime movie in the Dropbox on D2L. You have pretty much carte blanche on how you want this thing to look, okay? Please don't copy the example. This is just an example. Use whatever creative, applications and faculties that you have to make something cool. I've given you the clock. Have fun with it. This is just supposed to be a fun little assignment that gets us working with expressions, okay? Not everything in here needs to be animated by an expression. The only thing that I'm looking for you guys to animate with expressions are the hands on the clock. The alarm going off and all that jazz, you can use traditional keyframe animation to establish that effect, okay? And don't worry about sound. Every semester people are like, can I get a alarm bell sound effect? No. I don't want to listen to 30 animations where I have alarm clocks going off for an hour, okay? No alarm bell sound effects, not needed, okay? All right, is everyone confident and understanding of what the expectations for this week's homework and lab are? Everyone got it? Let's get to work. Let's do it.